Afternoon, Happy New Year. If you're watching this on New Year's Day, if you're watching this on New Year's Eve, I hope you have a great time tonight. Let me know what you're up to in the comments. Speaking of comments, I just wanted to talk about some of the comments on the last video I posted, which was about the future of the car and what car collectors think of all this. I will be doing a video with Richard from Challenger Road. I'm in my gardening top because I've had a pretty busy day today and I've got low battery, but I am charging on my Wolf box, which you'll see in a future video when I get around to editing it, me having a day running around with all my car collection and updating you on what cars are still in the Geoff household in 2024 for the final sort of update of the year. So I did a video talking about the fact that car values cannot maintain in a society that is turning against the car, and you lot agreed. I'm just going to read you some of the comments, actually, so your comment may well be here. So let's just take a look and we'll discuss some of them. Kawakuru says, when you drive an old, cheap, reliable Volvo, it's cheaper for nature and for you. You won't fall from a height if something happens. Exactly. I'm still running around in this brown Volvo cross country. It's now done 175,106 miles, and I haven't done anything to it. I paid 600 quid for it, and I've put a fresh set of tyres on it. And I've installed a radio, but that was it really. Damien, I'm 55 and I could see a time not too distant, probably in my life, hopefully if I last to be a pensioner, that any form of privately owned car will eventually revert back to a luxury item owned solely by the very wealthy, which if you think about it, that's where it all started. I mean, anyone with £150,000 spend on a new Range Rover isn't thinking about miles per gallon or road tax or depreciation for that matter, so it's already happening. Yes, and I would add to that, they're also not thinking about their fellow man or like the environment, air pollution or anything. You know, when you're that wealthy, you don't need to think about any of those things because you can just pay to offset it. Paul Newman, Porsche is recalling 27,000 Taycan electric sedans with concerns that a short circuit in the battery system may lead to a fire. At the same time, Audi is recalling 6,500 e-tron GT and RS models. The Audi recall affects 22 to 2024 model years. Porsche recall spans 2020 to 2024. So all of them. Spoke to the Map Master earlier on. He was on his way on a road trip for New Year with his family, and his partner refused to go in the Taycan because she hates sitting around waiting charging. So my friend, who owns a £120,000 luxury Porsche, is currently on a road trip in a 12-year-old Volkswagen Golf. It might be older than that, actually. So there you go, says it all. Trevor, he's talking about the Map Master, actually. Having just seen that Map Master can't get car or home insurance, do we now put signage on our homes asking electric vehicle owners to kindly not park within the property curtilage, but leave them on the public highway due to insurance issues? I think a lot more of that is going to unfold next year. Lots of people commented on my jumper, my pullover, my sweater in the last video. Did talking to a Porsche owner make you wear that posh green pullover? And I said, ha ha, I like my new fisherman's jumper. No, it wasn't a Christmas gift. I treated myself. Someone says it's the war on everyone. I think that's correct. Someone says, well thought out, Geoff, my man, if that's what it was. No, it wasn't really thought out. It was just more of a monologue. I mean, I'd sent Richard some voice messages voicing some of what I said, but no, it was all just off the cuff. Longer one here from Stuart Trimmer. I'm absolutely terrified about what nefarious things are waiting to come out the shadows and deliver the death blow to the automotive world. My whole life has been about vehicles from the day I was born to the present day. Me too. I've been around cars, commercial vehicles, tractors and coaches all my life. I work as a driver and my hobby is vintage vehicle restoration. But that hobby is harder and harder to enjoy. I have a small collection of classic cars which I've worked hard to restore, but the roads in my area are so bad, the cars literally get shaken to bits. Yeah, I hear you. The fuel is expensive and the insurance is going up and up every year. They collectively do less than 2,000 miles a year. I can't understand the justification for the increases. I fear sooner than later my collection will transform from road-going vehicles into large ornaments. The fear is real. Obviously, we now know that Sadiq Khan is being given a knighthood. No one can think of a single thing that Sadiq Khan has done in London to improve the place other than increase knife sales, and yet he's been given a knighthood. Doesn't that tell you everything that you need to know about the Labour government and Keir Starmer when they're knighting people that have actually destroyed cities? Another comment. I previously worked for an established EV company which went bust, overpriced and overweight. Nice simple one, that. Crazy for cars. You know what, Geoff? That's why I and a lot of other subscribers watch your channel instead of Richard's or Matt's, or which one you might name, where rich people talk with very rich people about rich people problems, like selling a £200,000 car, or which of their supercars will increase its value even more. You make sure that everyone understands the big picture and what problems arise for all of us. I just like old cars. I really do. I like cheap cars. I like a bargain. And I could be a millionaire and I'd probably still be running around in this, basically. Stephen says, I have great respect for Harry Metcalf, but I find the tests on exotic cars increasingly irrelevant. With all the speed restrictions, cameras, potholes, roadworks, etc., there's no chance to revel in the performance. The lack of luggage space, stupid impracticality is a total turn-off. Big win for me would be a G-Wagon for the wife. She loves the car. Yes?
Can I get in the back?
Another comment here in a similar vein. We've been joined by someone in the back. I have a great respect for Harry Metcalf, but I find the tests on exotic cars increasingly irrelevant. With all the speed restrictions, cameras, potholes, roadworks, there's no chance to revel in the performance. The lack of luggage space, stupid impracticality is a total turn-off. Big win for me would be a G-Wagon for the wife. She loves a square car. I agree. I don't see the point in owning a car that you can't actually use for anything. Again, that's why I like Volvo estates. You can use them for everything. My favourite car for driving at work was a 3.2 litre Merc SLK. Yep, those are lovely. Dream car here, Mark II Escort RS 2000 X-Pack. Good time to buy one of those because prices are coming down. Interesting comment here, and I need to verify if this is true. Apparently there's a 5-year waiting list for the Rolls-Royce Spectre, the fully electric Spectre, so we need to work about on that one. And this comment here is really interesting. I work in IT and I've been on a government contract for 9 months. Seeing how government operates internally is scary. I've spent 40 years working on my corporate jobs, all different companies with their good and bad points, over 20 companies. Working now in government is like a whole new world. The main problem I see is zero accountability, low standards, poor management, low skills and lack of work ethic. There's a lot more I could add. I saw a report today that suggested 1 out of 5 people in the UK might end up working for the government. When so many people work for the government, you'll end up with the USSR and all the garbage that comes with it. The government is not only not fit for purpose, it's an anchor sinking the entire country. Great comment there, and a great point about accountability and low standards. There's no motivation for politicians to do anything worthwhile because there isn't any reason for them to do a good job, because they get the same rewards regardless. I mean, if we operated in a sort of Mexican sort of system where people ended up hanging from bridges, then maybe, or being dragged through the street by horses, maybe there'd be accountability. Visor View says, a pensioner loses a £300 winter fuel allowance, then gets an increase in their road tax and most probably insurance as well. The government then tells them that they will keep making driving more expensive, but they can save a fortune by spending £20,000 so they can drive 4 miles to the supermarket once or twice a week. It's insanity. A car is only polluting when the engine is running. Most cars are only running for a short period of time. The owner is at work all day and it's not being driven while they are asleep. Superb comment. Thank you very much for that one. Let's whiz through a few more. Petrol and diesel cars are more efficient, says Happy Snapper Man, than they've ever been today. Government should let the market drive the motor industry rather than force EV onto everyone. The phrase, it's a free country, is not used anymore. It is a free country, but only if you've recently arrived. Jack Holder says, 1975 to 2005 wasn't just the peak of the motor car, it was the peak of Western humanity. Quality of life had reached a natural peak. That's why this era will always be remembered and adored. The cars represent a time now fading into the history books. Slightly concerning there, but I'm inclined to agree. Peter says, it looks like London is saving the planet by burning EV bin wagons. Yes, there was another electric bin wagon that went up in smoke in London just the other day. Someone says, I never understood... As a V8 of some sort. I never understood why the car collectors don't speak out more, as it will affect them more surely. I think they'll be the last to realise. That's the thing. But Richard's pretty on the ball, and Richard, you know, I'll do another video with him because Richard is one of us, even if he owns a McLaren P1. Master IM7JC says, Geoff, the government only release such bits of work before Christmas, so it gets lost in all the other news that it gets lost in. It's called putting out the rubbish. That's done by all governments. Again, you are rocking it by keeping important news in the mainstream. Thank you for that. That's talking about the new consultation on cars, electric cars, and how to push through the mandate. The video is coming, I promise. Margie Long says, you voiced my thoughts, Geoff. None of these luxury car video presenters talk about the end of petrol and diesel cars. No, I think you're right. Well, nobody, Nobody's brave enough to talk about it. They feel like they're going to turn off their audiences. But their audiences are interested in what's happening because their audience are car owners. Co-ops says, thank you, Geoff, for hitting the nail on the head. I'm pessimistic about the automotive future. I think the ownership model for car ownership will be gone within a decade, replaced by some sort of carbon credit pay-as-you-drive model. Terrifying. Tim Hicks says, EVs will kill the motor manufacturers. Tim, you are correct. It's already happening. Andy Thompson, the entire attitude of government misses the point about car ownership. They simply don't understand that you drive a particular car because you like that car. They just see cars as a means to an end, a way to get you from A to B with no other factors involved. That's why they think public transport can do the same job. They also see a driver's freedom to drive is also a freedom to cause death and injury, but instead of improving training, all they want to do is remove the human factor from the transport altogether. All this proves is that all politicians have absolutely no grasp of psychology and no idea how any of this works, which makes them utterly unqualified to make decisions about private car ownership. Excellent comment. One of the reasons I enjoy driving so much is because I was mugged by someone with a knife when I was a younger person on a bus. I was in high school, I think, and it's given me a fear of buses. I like the comfort of my own car. Luke Blundell says there's simply too many disconnected things that have occurred recently for it not to be a calculated crackdown on personal mobility. There's going to be lots of people who just can't afford to buy, let alone run, a personal car. And yeah, once you start adding all of these things together, you're forced to conclude that it is a concerted and organised effort. Vincent, I'm so pleased another person washes up and doesn't use a dishwasher. 10 or 20 minutes washing up while watching, listening to something on my tablet. Job done, all put away. You don't get a bad back standing up to wash up, but you will from 40 years of constantly loading and unloading the dishwasher. I used to love washing up at Christmas when I was a little boy with my two older sisters, talking, mucking about and having a laugh. The best of times. It really brought you together as a family. I was born in 1971, by the way. And I replied, saying something along the lines of, I remember on a Sunday when we'd had loads of people around for dinner, or for lunch rather, there'd be like a big production line doing washing up, and it was a very social thing. So yeah, we don't have a dishwasher, and I probably won't ever get one. Someone else says, totally agree, Geoff. I personally think car finance has ruined the luxury car market. Anybody with a poor credit rating living on a council estate can now have a high-end BMW, Mercedes or Audi, etc. I do laugh to myself when I see such cars parked up outside unpresentable council blocks. Yeah, or like all of these places in Birmingham where they've got AMGs and supercars and everything, but the houses look like crap holes. Back in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was rare to see a BMW M Sport or AMG, and if you had a Jaguar XJ, you were the man. Back then, us working class only drove Fords and Vauxhalls. It's true. The changing nature of the automotive world has changed things. Dale Steele says, I remember walking to school and seeing a brand new Volvo T5R in red. I loved Volvos even then, so seeing that was better than a Ferrari. But you're right, in those days, people didn't have new cars. If you had a BMW, any BMW, it was a status symbol. People just couldn't afford nice German cars. It was a sea of Ford and Vauxhall. And that back in those days, it meant something when you got the newest registration plate. Do you remember that as well? You'd go out looking for P plates, or I remember going out looking for P plates. That was 1997. So I was 11. And now I can't even tell you what plate we're on. And I don't care. Tigers Ilberhanis says, I just read an article that used car buyers are refusing newer cars due to all the electronic trinkets installed, fearing failures on costly repairs and also probably surveillance. Yes, correct. People are refusing newer cars, and there's an article that's come out today saying Volkswagen, there's been some sort of data breach on 800,000 electric Volkswagens. They've been recording too much data. Need to dive into the article, but we'll do that when we get back to normal next week. Darius says, they don't have the soul. Says it all. Driving my W124 makes me feel like I'm at war with these regulatory idiots, and I love that. W124, just a proper car. Global Eye says, the so-called motoring organisations are strangely mute on these proposed horrific insurance and road tax increases. Do you think they are on the other side? Yes, I do. More on that in the coming year when we get the Motorists Action Network up and running properly. My apologies that it hasn't been done already. I've been busy. Paul says, Geoff, I've been in the motor repair trade for nearly 50 years. I'm now retired. You are 100% correct on your views of the future. In addition to the points you make, you are of course aware of the unrepairability of new cars and engines. I have a friend with a small repair garage. He has 3 Audis in with blown engines, but so far no replacement engines have been found. Look at the Jaguar Land Rover engine debacle. Not economic to repair or replace, even if parts are available. How many people will shell out for a new EcoBoost engine? I'm also aware of the number of Range Rovers piled up at dealerships waiting for engines. A shocking state of affairs for the major manufacturer. Keep up the good work with your videos. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it's not just Jaguar Land Rover. It really is all of them. It's all of this technology that they're piling onto the cars to make them more cleaner. Tend to screw up the engines, and the engines are expensive. If you want a laugh, join the Ingenium Engine Failure group on Facebook. It's very interesting. Mark says, I agree, it's your comment on cars growing up. I'm 47, and in the 80s to see a BMW or Mercedes was a fairly rare thing and an event. Now every other car is one and not special anymore. Mr. Ixbus says, sound and vibrations are the universe. Old petrol cars do that Zen stuff with us. Interesting point. The Wee Doug said the Volvo sounded great when you booted it. I've got an old Golf V5 with a motorcycle can for a rear box. Sounds like half a Lambo at full chat. But on a serious note, we are in trouble and most don't see it or believe it, I'm afraid. They don't want to see it and they don't want to believe it. Arthur Miles says, I was very young and worked at a restaurant right at the side of the A1. A good customer who worked for Roots Group came in with an E-Type. It was gorgeous. The most beautiful car I'd ever seen. He took me down the A1 at 110 miles an hour. Whoa. It was the weekend just before the 70 mile an hour speed limit was introduced. Will I ever have the same experience again? Almost certainly not. God help us and save us from this madness. I loved everybody sharing their, because I shared my stories about the Mercedes SL, and it was really nice reading everybody else's stories as to how they got into cars. Paula says, loving the 5-pot blasts between the talky bits. Your grin says it all. Absolutely right. Matt says, I'm trying to get my lad into it. I take him out in my 35-year-old BMW. I let him change gear in my manual Civic, and I've booked him a V8 driving experience in February. Fingers crossed. In my humble opinion, over-regulation is killing motoring. The only way to save it is cut the red tape. Absolutely right. I let my kids change gear in manual cars as well, don't I?
Yeah.
As a person who likes classic car shows and transport events, says Jonathan Rowley, I'm worried these events will come to an end with the new MOT and emissions being put on older cars. Yes, they will. We're already seeing events being cancelled. We know that wasn't it the Brighton to London mini run was cancelled because of ULEZ and stuff going on in Brighton. So yes, we're already seeing the death of the automotive fan world being impacted. Stuart says, my mum's 82, her car insurance last year was 348 quid, just had the renewal, wait for it, 279 quid. Lou Life says, we're witnessing the slow but inevitable end of the world, to which someone replied saying, no, just the end of the Empire of the West. Yes, I think that's correct. Another few. Also, I have noticed that the most loved mayor of London is dead set on getting his paper mile going, as he has published the prices. Remember, if you live in London, you're exempt if your plastic oblong thing with numbers and letters mysteriously disappears overnight. All these schemes utilising monitoring what cars enter net zero zones require the plastic oblong things with letters and numbers to make sure they charge you accordingly. I don't understand why more people aren't removing their plastic oblong things, but I think people are scared that they're going to get caught. There's this kind of mentality that if you do something, you're immediately going to get caught for it, and it's not the case. Captain Pugwash says, modern cars are too isolating. Way back in the day when I started driving, you had simple engines. You could feel the road and know what was happening through the steering wheel. The best and worst thing they did was change from cross-ply to radial tyres. I could drift vehicles with ease before it was even called drifting, and I could be in control. Then they introduced cross-plies, which grip much better, until they don't, at which point you have a crash. Newer drivers do not know when they've reached the breakaway point, so they push their luck. Yeah, or they just don't know. Like, they're just inexperienced. You do need to be able to push your car to find out what it can do and at what point it breaks away, so you know what to do in that situation. It's really important. Peter, well done, Geoff. Hit the nail on the head. I'm retired for the first time in my motoring life. I can afford to buy pretty much what I like, supercars not included. It's looking like a Range Rover L322. Obviously with the heart and not the head. If I don't do it now, I never will. Last chance saloon. Peter, get it bought. Go on. I fancy an L322 as well. 1974 Slipper says, the best and most important video for a long time. Yeah, I spent most of December messing around with cars and just enjoying myself. Hence, we didn't really have much content from the studio where I was sort of tearing a new one with whatever news articles had come out, but we will be getting back to that in January for a bit. Falorwes says, yours is one of the best motoring channels on the TV or web. Thank you very much. Zed Hughes says,
It's actually the most boring car channel.
YouTube's most boring car channel. You are correct. Zed Hughes says, it was 2 exciting childhood memories, Christmas car presents. Yep, absolutely. Another person says, great jumper, Geoff. Thank you for that. Darren says, it's like university degrees. Everyone has to get one. So they give you no advantage in getting a high-paying job. There are even checkout chicks with degrees. So no one stands out, just like all the exclusive cars that aren't exclusive anymore. Great comparison. Martin says, a major not ever mentioned problem with EVs is that most of them will come from China. So when you buy one, your money goes to China and your country is poorer, unless China buys the same value of your stuff, which they do. However, while you buy frivolously, China buys strategically. They buy your real estate, your services, your businesses and your ports. And when your car dies in 10 to 15 years, you're left with nothing, but China owns your house, metaphorically speaking. Think about that next time you buy a Chinese product. Great comment that isn't mentioned enough. Challenge the Road and Shmee, says Al Bundy, to a much greater degree, and many others like them, will never cover important issues to the depth and detail required because they have a vested interest in their brands promoted by the medium of YouTube. Cowardly? Yes, because we're looking into an abyss. They're the kind who will only focus on their own incomes and not rock the boat. That's for others to do. I do agree to some degree. I think Richard from Challenge the Road's a bit different. He does talk about stuff, and he did a lot on Land Rover thefts and all that sort of business. Richard, I think, is more of a real person, but you'd never get Shmee. I can't stand the guy, to be totally honest. But you'd never get Shmee sitting down and talking about like low emission zones or road tax or petrol prices or anything important like that. He just wants to talk about the latest supercar, and I'm not really interested at all in supercars. Richard from Challenge the Road comments said, be good to have a catch-up video, Geoff. Let's catch up next week. Lots to go through, to which I said, yes, definitely. So I will be catching up with Richard. And Richard also put that his dream car, money no object, would be a Lamborghini Diablo Viola SE30. That's the purple Lamborghini. I said that's one of my all-time favourites, but then Richard sent me a link and said the last one he saw up for sale went for £2 million. £2 million. I didn't realise. I thought they were like 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 pounds. I didn't realise they'd reached £1 million. David Jones says, who's sick of EV car ads on telly? I don't watch the telly, so I don't see many of them. Trevor says, man, you speak reality. You say it how it really is. I own a BMW Z4 Coupe 3 litre and I absolutely love it. The sound of the gear change. I'm in control of the driving experience. I'm going to enjoy it for as long as I can afford to, because I know what's coming my way. The government are, and at some point, are going to make it unaffordable to drive it. Buy electric cars or don't drive. In a nutshell, this is what we're being told to do. Absolutely spot on. Burgess Scab says, maybe have to buy a racetrack for when they ban internal combustion cars from the road. You can still rag a turbo diesel around the track on red diesel or cooking oil. We may get there in this Mad Max world. Murray says, well said, Geoff. The only manufacturer that will be in profit will be Corgi and Matchbox. And even they'll die off with, the next generations coming through that don't like cars. Decay in the UK says, the kind of thought-provoking Geoff video that I like, not necessarily in a good way. Thank you for that. It was a bit of a banger, I thought. Danny John says, yes, the classic and luxury car industry is living in denial. Only a couple of pages left now. Right, this one's really interesting. It's a longer comment, but I think this is really good. I've been pondering on this for a while. Values of older cars. Like Geoff says, there's not a single new car currently on sale that I want. Modern supercars do nothing for me either. I'm interested in real-world enthusiast cars from the 80s to about 2010. Which remain fairly affordable, although some performance versions have seen big value gains in the last decade. The cars I'm interested in are not always performance models. Could just as easily be a basic 4-cylinder E36 BMW, for example. So what might happen? Personally, I think we're at a fork in the road and it will go one of two ways. We'll call them A or B. The first scenario, A, is that many of us continue to completely reject new cars and EVs, and clearly many of us have. We continue to buy older cars from a decreasing supply, and we spend considerable sums on looking after these cars, which could become more sought after, i.e. values rise. I firmly believe that there's a will among just enough of the general public for this to happen. Although Geoff bemoans paying £410 per annum to tax his Volvo, he's still far better off at the end of the year than a contemporary who leases a car for thousands of pounds down and pays hundreds of pounds per month for something that might be just £150 tax a year, but he or she never owns it. This scenario might last for 2 to 3 decades until those of us who are now in our late 30s to late 50s start to give up driving. And what then? Who knows? Scenario B is that values fall due to the continuing stagnation of living standards, falling real world incomes and rising cost of living, and of course, what future taxes and restrictions our leaders force upon us. It's as simple as that, I feel. Which scenario do most of you think will be the reality? Regarding modern supercars, I think they are a good thing to put money into. They are not a good thing to put money into. Far too many of these very overcomplicated and grossly overpriced machines now, and as Geoff says in the video, the level of interest from youngsters just isn't the same as it was 30 years ago. Great comment, if a longer one. Let me know what you think. Which scenario are we going to end up with? Ivor says, I had a brief discussion with a family member about the occasional times a country finds itself with no government at all. Inevitably, that country prospers until they get some sort of working government back to mess everything up again. It's a little lesson that happens sometimes. We should pay attention. Mostly, governments just ruin people's lives. Let's do without them. Trucker says, new jumper for Christmas, Geoff. And then I got some quick ones. 118 Scale says, you look just like me when I was driving my 2.5 litre Focus ST this weekend. Love the 5-pot sound. Don't know if I can stomach Shmee. Kev says, I've got an old Volvo, which is my pride and joy. Is it just me, or is it such a depressing time to be alive? Smug says, once again, if I won the lottery, it would be a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ or a Revelto. Bruce says, tell me, is the green elf jumper one of those thanks, Mom, I really love you present? Yes, look, I'm wearing it. Right, we're going to call it at that. I've got 2 more pages to go, but there's been too many. The wife's back, and that means I've got to go unpack the car. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Have a fantastic New Year's Eve, and I'll see you in the new year.